Arsenal set for triple transfer announcement as Igor Tyjon confirms Blackburn exit. Arsenal supporters could be on the verge of another exciting moment in the transfer window, with the Gunners reportedly preparing to announce a new wave of signings after completing medical checks. One of the names at the centre of the latest developments is Igor Tyjon, the highly rated young striker who's expected to leave Blackburn Rovers and continue his development at Arsenal. The 18-year-old has effectively confirmed his Blackburn departure with an emotional social media message, and his words have immediately sparked plenty of discussion among supporters. Tyjon thanked Blackburn for the 3 years he spent at the club, while also admitting that the final months had been difficult. He referred to certain people and reasons that he could not discuss publicly. That mysterious comment has added another layer to the story. Could it be connected to Blackburn's attempts to prevent or delay his move to Arsenal? That remains unclear. But what is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore is the fact that Tyjon is now heading towards the Emirates. Arsenal finally get their man. Arsenal have reportedly been tracking Tyjon for some time, with previous attempts to bring him to North London failing to produce an agreement. This time, however, negotiations have moved forward. The expected deal is understood to involve an initial fee of around £1 million, with potentially another £2 million in add-ons, making this a relatively low-risk investment for Arsenal, but one that could become significant if the youngster fulfills his potential. Tyjon is expected to begin with Arsenal's under-21 setup, giving him an opportunity to adapt to the club's footballing environment. But there is an intriguing possibility. If he impresses during training and development matches, he could potentially attract the attention of Mikel Arteta and earn opportunities around the first team. And that is exactly what makes this transfer interesting. Arsenal are not simply collecting young players. The club's recruitment strategy increasingly focuses on identifying talented footballers early and developing them within a competitive environment. But Tyjon could be only one part of the story. The bigger picture for Arsenal supporters is the possibility of multiple announcements arriving together. Reports indicate the Gunners are close to completing several deals, with medicals becoming a key stage before official confirmation. That means Arsenal fans could soon be looking at a triple transfer announcement. For supporters, this is where the excitement really begins. Transfers can dominate the conversation for weeks, but everything changes once medicals are completed and contracts are signed. Until Arsenal officially publish the announcements, however, fans should separate confirmed developments from expectations and reports. Tyjon's farewell is a strong indication of his departure from Blackburn, but Arsenal's official confirmation remains the final step. Why this matters for Arteta? From Arteta's perspective, adding young attacking talent gives Arsenal another player to monitor for the future. The first-team squad needs immediate quality, but successful clubs also need a pipeline of players capable of becoming first-team options. Tyjon could therefore be viewed as a long-term project rather than an immediate solution, and that distinction is important. Arsenal supporters should not expect an 18-year-old arrival to suddenly become the answer to every attacking problem. Instead, the real question is whether Arsenal can provide the right environment for him to develop. Training alongside experienced players, working under Arteta's coaching staff, and competing against high-level opposition could accelerate his progress. The bigger transfer message. The potential arrival of Tyjon also sends a message about Arsenal's wider recruitment strategy. The club wants to compete for major trophies, but it also wants to build for the future. That means identifying promising players before their value explodes. If Tyjon develops into a top-level striker, Arsenal could eventually look back at a deal worth roughly £1 million plus achievable bonuses as one of those smart investments that help strengthen the club's future. But there is still plenty of work to do. For now, the headline is simple. Igor Tyjon is saying goodbye to Blackburn. Arsenal are expected to confirm his arrival, and supporters could soon have even more transfer news to celebrate. The possibility of 3 announcements makes the next few days particularly interesting. So Arsenal fans, the question is this: Who do you think should be the biggest priority for Arsenal before the window closes? Let us know your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Arsenal transfer updates, breaking football news and detailed analysis, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications and stay with us for the latest developments. Arsenal supporters may be heading into one of the most dramatic periods of the transfer window. But while the young striker could soon become an Arsenal player, the biggest story remains much larger: Julián Álvarez. The Argentine forward's future at Atlético Madrid has reached another tense stage, and Arsenal are watching closely as the transfer deadline approaches. Igor Tyjon has effectively said goodbye to Blackburn Rovers after 3 years at the club. The 18-year-old's farewell message was particularly intriguing because he admitted that the final months had been difficult and referred to certain people and reasons he could not publicly explain. That immediately created speculation about whether the situation was connected to Arsenal's attempts to sign him. The expected deal is reportedly worth an initial £1 million, potentially rising by another £2 million in add-ons. Tyjon is expected to begin with Arsenal's under-21s, but his development could eventually bring him into Mikel Arteta's first-team plans. For Arsenal, this is the type of recruitment that could pay off in the long term. But Tyjon is not the name dominating the headlines. Julian Alvarez's situation has become one of the most fascinating transfer stories of the summer. The 26-year-old reportedly wants to leave Atlético Madrid, while Barcelona has been his preferred destination. The problem? Atlético are not willing to make it easy. Reports indicate that Atlético would consider a huge offer of around €150 million, approximately £128 million, while Barcelona currently face financial limitations in reaching that level, and that could potentially create an opening for Arsenal. Sky Sports reports that Atlético will not sell Alvarez to Barcelona, leaving Arsenal as a possible Premier League escape route if the striker changes his mind. That is the crucial part of this story. Arsenal may have the financial power, but do they have Alvarez's decision? Arteta's big challenge. Mikel Arteta reportedly remains involved in Arsenal's pursuit. The challenge is not simply negotiating with Atlético. Arsenal must also convince Alvarez that the Emirates is the right destination. The striker's preference has reportedly been Barcelona, so Arteta would need to sell him the vision of Arsenal's project, Premier League football, Champions League ambitions, and a central role in a team competing for major trophies. That could be the difference between Arsenal completing one of the biggest transfers in their history and watching Alvarez remain in Spain. If Arsenal eventually agree to pay around £128 million, the deal would represent an enormous investment. It would also put Alvarez among the most expensive players in Premier League history. That raises an important question for Arsenal fans. Is Alvarez worth that kind of money? There is a strong argument in his favour. He can play as a centre-forward, but also operate in deeper attacking positions. His movement, finishing and ability to link with teammates would give Arteta another elite attacking option. But the financial risk cannot be ignored. Arsenal have already invested heavily in the squad, so spending more than £100 million on another attacker would put enormous expectations on the Argentine. Barcelona remain the complication. Alvarez's preference for Barcelona has been widely reported, but Atlético's refusal to sell him to their La Liga rivals could ultimately force the player to reconsider his options. This is where Arsenal's position becomes fascinating. If Barcelona cannot complete the deal and Atlético refuse to negotiate with them, Arsenal could suddenly become one of the only realistic destinations. But Arsenal cannot simply assume that Alvarez will accept the move. The player has to want it. Put all of this together and Arsenal fans could be looking at a potentially huge few days. Tyjon is heading towards the Emirates. Other Arsenal signings have reportedly completed medical processes. And behind the scenes, the Alvarez situation continues to develop. That is why the final days of the window could be explosive. But supporters should remember one thing: Alvarez to Arsenal is still a developing transfer story, not an officially completed deal. The latest reports say Atletico have set a deadline for Alvarez to make a decision, with Friday reportedly important because the club would need time to find a replacement if he leaves. So, Arsenal fans, the biggest question is now clear. Would you spend around £128 million to bring Julian Alvarez to the Emirates? Would he be the final piece of Arteta's attack? Or should Arsenal walk away and invest that money elsewhere? The transfer window is entering its decisive stage, and Arsenal could still have one massive surprise left. Subscribe for more Arsenal transfer news, breaking updates and detailed analysis as the final decisions are made.